right, solving two-step equations with rationals. The first part of this is reviewing from the beginning of the year stuff, like our integer song that we learned. So it should be pretty simple. Equations with rational numbers can be solved just like any equation, but you must follow the rules for integer operations. That's our song. Same signs add and keep, different signs subtract. Keep the sign of the larger number, then you'll be exact. So, if I'm adding integers, if the two numbers I'm adding have the same sign, then what do? Add and keep the same sign. So if I have a positive plus a positive, obviously my answer is going to be positive. A negative plus a negative, you're still going to have a negative. If signs are different, what do we do if they're different? Subtract and keep the sign of the larger number. Well, in this example here, I have a 6 and a 5. Who's bigger?
6.
Is it positive or a negative?
Positive.
So that's why my answer is positive. Here, I have a 6 and a 5. Who's bigger?
Negative 6.
A negative. So that's why my answer is negative. Different signs, you subtract them, keep the same sign. Okay, subtracting integers, you're going to rewrite the problem to add the opposite. Then follow the rules for adding. So some math people like you to rewrite the problem. But let me ask you this. This 6, is it a positive 6 or a negative 6? Positive. This 7, is it positive or a negative? Negative. Okay, well if you know that, then you don't need to rewrite this. That's a waste of time. Because I like to teach people the short way, right? Because mathematicians like shortcuts. So these are following the same rules here. Now, moving to multiplying and dividing. Let me refresh. A few months ago, remember I did a negative times a negative. What did that turn out equaling? A positive. Does anyone remember the trick I said? Well, maybe you'll remember it now. What's a negative times a negative times a negative?
Negative.
Negative. What was the trick? Even number of negatives turn out to positive. Odd number of negatives turn out to be negative. What if I change this guy to a plus? How many negative numbers do I have? 2. So is my answer a positive or a negative?
Positive.
Positive. What if I had 7 negatives multiplied times each other? My answer is going to be negative. Well, let me ask you this. What if I had to, this would be tragic, if I had to divide 27 negative numbers? What's my answer going to be? A negative. Why? Because 27 is an odd number. So division and multiplication, odd numbers are negative, even numbers are positive. Okay? So refreshing that, if the signs are the same, then the answer is, so if I had 2 of the same signs, the answer turned out to be positive. So a positive times a positive will always be a positive. A negative times a negative will always be positive. If signs are different, then the answer is negative. I have a little typo here on the bottom line. This was supposed to, this negative, I can't even draw straight here. That negative's supposed to say positive. So you need to fix your paper too. So a positive times a negative is going to give you a negative. A negative times a positive is going to give you a negative. So back when I was in middle school, y'all heard many of my silly tricks by now. Here's how I remembered it, because I had trouble remembering it. Okay, so what I said, if I was a positive person, like I had a positive attitude, and I became friends with another person that has a positive attitude, we both have a positive attitude together. Well, if I had a negative attitude and I became friends with someone else that had a negative attitude, can we get any negative of an attitude? No, we're already negative. So two negative attitudes together, they have nowhere to go but up and have a positive attitude. So that's kind of what I said there. Then I said, okay, if I have a positive attitude and I became friends with a negative attitude person, what happens to me?
You would be turned negative.
I turned to a negative attitude. They rubbed off on me. Don't your friends sometimes rub off on you?
Yeah.
You start liking the stuff that they like. Well, if I had a negative attitude and I became friends with a positive person, what did I do to that positive person?
Negative.
I made them a negative attitude. Okay, that's a gooberhead way of how I remembered it when I was a middle schooler. All right, so these 6 problems below, we're going to work, but I'm going to set a 1-minute timer to see how many you get right. Oh gosh, I didn't mean to do that. So, are we ready? On our mark, set, go. All right. Let's check those numbers. Here I have same signs or different? Same. So I'm going to add and keep. Is my answer going to be negative or positive? Add and keep, they're going to be negative. Only multiplying and dividing do you get rid of signs. Number 2, is it same or different? Different, so I subtract, keep the sign of the larger number. So is the larger number positive or negative?
Negative.
So my answer is a negative. I subtracted, I get negative 27. Number 3, same or different?
Different.
Different, keep the sign of the larger number.
27.
So is my answer negative or positive?
Negative.
Negative, I subtract them, I get a negative 13. 4, same or different?
Same.
So I add and keep, so that means my answer is going to be negative.
Negative.
Add them, and I get 19. Now I have some multiplication. I have 2 negatives. So is my answer positive or negative? Positive, 72. I have 1 negative, so what's my answer? Negative, 42. Now I'm dividing, and I have 1 negative. So is my answer negative or positive? Negative 6. Dividing, and I have 2 negatives, so it has to be positive 5. All right, that's our kind of review. Moving to the back. Going to solve some problems. And you remember how, probably elementary school, you had order of operations. Remember order of operations? What was that fancy word that you followed? PEMDAS. P-E... PEMDAS. And P stood for parentheses. And if you didn't have parentheses, you moved to the E, exponents. Okay, so I've taught you my silly story, but I kind of came up with an order of operations of my own for solving equations using my silly story. Your first thing to do is to get rid of who? Your kids. So the first order is to get rid of kids. Second would be get rid of any creepers. And lastly would be to deal with the couples. Okay, well what happens if I don't have any kids? What step would I move to? The creeper. Okay, so let's use that to help us solve. So on number 9, first off, does the silly story totally confuse anybody and I should stop using it? We like it? Okay. Okay. We like breaking up families. That's good to know.
Why?
All right, so in number 9, what characters are involved in this story?
Kids and couple.
Kids and a couple. So I don't have any creepers. So order of operations, do we have any kids?
Yes.
All right, who's the kids?
9.
How do I move 9?
Subtract them.
I'm going to subtract 9. I have a negative 4k equals 23.
7. Wait, no, 3.
Okay. Now, do I have any more kids to deal with?
No.
Any creepers to deal with?
No.
Do I?
No.
Okay, so I skip that and go to the couple. Okay, I see one person of the couple's name is K. What's the name of the other couple?
Negative 4.
Negative. This person has a negative attitude. Do you think they're going to leave the negative attitude in the house, or is that getting kicked to the curb with them? They've taken that negative attitude with them. So how do I break this couple up? Divide, because opposite of this multiplication is divide. They're taking that negative attitude with them. I don't want it left in my house. K takes over the house with no negative attitude. Oh, 23 divided by 4. Is that going to be pretty? Well, this is a no calculator section. Remember, for your test tomorrow, you're not going to have decimals. But I need to find what this equals. So can 4 go into 23?
No. Yes, but not.
It can go, not equally. It can go in 5 times. 5 times 4 is 20. Subtract and I get 3. Now what happens? Decimal, add a 0. Can 4 go into 30? 8. 7 times. 7 times 4 is 28. I have 2 left over. What do I do now? Bring down to 0. Can 4 go into 20? 5 times. 5 times 4 gives me exactly 20. So I'm done. So is my answer 5.75?
Yes.
I had a positive divided by a negative. That's where you're going to mess up. What should my final answer be? A negative 5.75. I could come over here and check that. I could multiply this times a negative 4 and add 9. If it gives me 32, I'm good. So is there any, should you by the end of your quiz tomorrow know what you got on your quiz? If you tested all your questions and checked them, you should know if you got 100% or not before you turned in.
Wait, so the second you go and
You just put your answer back in for the variable.
you'll times
So you would do negative 4 times a negative 5.75 plus 9. If that gives you 32, you know you did something right. But remember, we're not going to have decimals on our quiz tomorrow. Decimals are going to come later, so it'll be easier to work with. Okay, let's take a look at number 10. What characters are involved in number 10? I see a creeper and I see some kids. All right, so order of operations says I deal with kids first. So what do I need to do? Add 14, because 14's the kid. I'm left with an adult with a creeper, and that equals 34. Kids are now safe. Now, do I have any more kids?
No.
Any creepers? Yes. I need to, I heard someone say, multiplied by 2. X equals 68. My 8th hour is a bit, they're a bit violent. They said, they added to my story. They said, you're shooting the creeper because the multiplication sign looks like a bullet. So they,
Man, they're darker than one.
they're darker than Miss Adams, breaking up families.
No, but Miss Adams taught Jose.
I taught Jose how to break up families.
That one's worse than
Now we're all masters. We're able to break up families. Get this, guys. We're able to break up families in less than like 30 seconds.
That's impressive.
That is impressive. We're getting rid of kids. We're shooting creepers. We're breaking up parents.
We're gonna make millions.
We're pretty masters at this. We could go to the World Series. And we'd get together and huddle together and we'd break off with our hands in the circle and we'll say,
If it was
I think we lose. In question on number 9, how did you get a negative?
because a positive divided by a negative, there's only one negative sign. So that means it's a negative answer.
We're all going to be the worst boys.
Yes.
So if you times that, would you have to divide it? If you times it like that, are you going to have to divide it to get your...
So if I'm checking my work here, I would go 68, plug it back in for x, divided by 2 minus 14. Well, what is 68 divided by 2? 34. 34 minus 14? 20. So I know I'm good. Okay.
You just do the opposite of what you did.
Okay, these next problems. What is going on? I get a new computer because mine was acting up, and here we go. All right.
This one's actually...
Must be me, huh?
No, you didn't.
All right. So, these 6 problems I'm going to let you do by yourself, but I'm going to go ahead and give you the answers. Why would I do such a thing?
We have to work it out.
I want you to be able to see if you can get that answer. If you can, then you're on a roll. So I've given you a little bit of time to work these problems, then we will go over them.